and welcome to another exciting and productive episode of 30-Minute Menus here on Channel 9. My name is Don Parsons, I'm your host, and as always, we've got a special guest in to cook a great meal for us. Our special guest tonight is my favorite time traveler of all time. His name is Peter Scott. Peter.
Well, Don, thanks for inviting me to your kitchen.
Oh, well, thank you for coming back.
Yes.
When you were here before, we went back to the 14th century and did a meal that couldn't be beat, and we're going to go back in time again.
Yes.
Where are we going this time?
Well, we're stuck in the 14th century again. Maybe 20 years towards the present, but no more.
Okay, well, times were simpler then.
Yes.
And messier, but simpler.
Well, I'm not so sure that's true, but we think of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, in fact, things were probably different, but not necessarily simpler.
Okay. What are we going to be looking at this evening?
Well, we've got 30 minutes, I know, and so we need to do something that's wonderful, but doesn't take all that long in preparation time. So I thought we'd have a bed of rice, and over this we would put a chicken dish called doucam, which means sweet measure. So it's chicken done in milk and honey with herbs, and this will then slather down over the rice. And then we need a side dish, so we have a recipe called fungus, and this is leeks and mushrooms done in a sauce. Okay.
Now, as I was saying, times were slower back in the 14th century, so finding that you didn't really have to try and get things done in a half hour.
Well, no, and of course, we cooked a great meal. That we involved a desire on my part and 50 servants in the basement.
who weren't union rated.
And they weren't union rated, and so they were doing all of this. And of course, the proportions would have been different. These were meals cooked for King Richard II, and proportions were wonderful. There's a cookbook from the period called First We Take 1,000 Eggs.
First we take 1,000 eggs.
Yes, and so
that's a lot of stress on one poor little chicken.
But that's the beginning of the recipe. We'll be much simpler tonight, just the two of us cooking, the two of us eating, but this could be made for many people.
And no eggs whatsoever?
Nope, not an egg in sight.
Okay. We're going to be serving that over the chicken dish over a bed of rice.
Oh, did you get that started?
I just got that started a few minutes ago.
Oh,
so
great.
That should be ready by the time we are.
Yes.
And you were telling me a little about that the rice we're using isn't actually temporally appropriate to this recipe, but
no. Well, the thing is, you can be absolutely authentic to a point, but this is such a delicate dish, subtle flavors that are really wonderful to enjoy. So if you use something, it would probably be something like groats or barley that would have been used originally. But I thought we should probably use white rice, so just ordinary long grain white rice, and this will give you the starchy flavor you need, but it soaks up all the taste, and you can actually taste them because they're not masked by the heavy flavor of brown rice or what have you.
And rice, being more or less oriental, wasn't known in Europe in the 14th century?
It would have been a little early for rice, so barley or oats would have been probably more appropriate, or probably bread. They might have put it on bread.
We'll do it this way.
Yes, yes.
Okay, here at home is what you are going to need for the chicken recipe. We're calling it milk and honey chicken. You'll want 3 to 4 pounds of chicken breasts, a half cup of flour mixed with a half teaspoon of salt and an eighth of a teaspoon of ground pepper. You'll want 3 tablespoons of oil, 3 cups of milk, a third of a cup of honey, 3 tablespoons of minced parsley, 2 leaves of fresh sage, half teaspoon of savory, half teaspoon of salt, and 1/8 teaspoon of ground pepper. We'll finish it off with a third of a cup of pine nuts.
And they're there just as a garnish, as we'll see.
Okay.
Well,
where do we start?
Well, in order to get all this meal going, we need to get the chicken cooking, so it'll be cooked in the 30 minutes, and then we'll proceed on to the other, and we can chit-chat about the herbs I brought along.
Okay.
So, you work on the flour, salt and pepper, and coat those, and I'll get the pot going with the oil.
Okay, now that's not a difficult proposition because you put the flour in here,
flour in a bag,
and we'll just add a little of the salt to it.
Yeah, not too much.
No, just to bring out the flavor, and a couple of grinds of pepper. We'll say to about 1/8 of a spoon. shake that a little bit to mix it through.
Yeah.
And in goes chicken.
Yeah, so I have this, I actually got the correct burner on. These little flowers that they have here are often mystical.
Yes.
Perception is everything.
I never have a problem with them, but I know a lot of people do.
Yes. I think paying attention helps.
Well, if that's what it took, I would have a problem.
Oh dear. This is heating up quite nicely now. And so we have one chicken breast. Oh, it'll sizzle in a minute. Oh dear, we seem to getting this on here.
Now, Peter, the 14th century isn't the only area you work in. You're a botanist, as
yes.
most people know from hearing you on the radio and seeing you on television.
Oh yes.
Spreading your expertise. And I know that you've recently done some consulting with regard to the kind of vegetables and flowers that would have been seen in the garden in Newfoundland around the 1840s.
Yes, I've done some gardens out in Trinity, and the houses were built in 1840, so they wanted the garden appropriate. Those are mostly ornamental plants, but then I was delighted this last summer when Jim Tuck, who's doing excavations at Fairlyn on Lord Baltimore's colony, asked me to put in a vegetable garden, a kitchen garden, appropriate to 1622.
Excellent.
So we've gotten that started, and it's been so interesting because for many years I've been interested in the medieval period, and this is where this cooking comes from. I'm interested in growing food, using herbs and plants and gardening, and here it is all together, and it's just so exciting.
In a time when many scientists are trying to take the whole thing forward and find new strains and more productive strains, it's nice to look back and look at where we're coming from.
Yes, yes. Probably the most unusual thing about the Baltimore garden is trying to get the appropriate carrots. It wasn't until 1630 that they selected for orange carrots.
Prior to that,
they were sort of a brick red or purple color.
Oh yeah.
And they had a milder flavor. But when you put them into anything like a soup, it all turned dark, like borscht. And so people found this rather disconcerting.
Well, tell me, from a vegetable point of view, are we eating better now than we were then, or is it possible to tell?
Absolutely not. Remember from the previous time I was here, I talked about a salad with no fewer than 26 different types of plants. And so compared with the Victorian era, we have just a fraction of the implements in the kitchen and only a fraction of the foods available. Now, talking about privileged people, the ordinary person probably is doing a little better now. But things haven't changed all that much.
But it's not necessarily the foods. It would be at least as much the way we prepare them.
That's right, yes.
So it's not that we've got better food, it's that we know that, if you take the same good food and prepare it a little bit differently, then you'll live longer.
That's right. Talking about preparation of food, we need to get on to the leeks and mushroom recipe now.
Okay, well, the leeks and mushrooms, there's the leeks, and in addition to these, here's what you're going to need to make them at home. You will want 8 small leeks, or 2 larger ones as we have, 3 tablespoons of butter, 1.5 pounds of large mushrooms, 1 cup of chicken stock, half teaspoon of brown sugar, half teaspoon of fresh ginger. For the beurre mani, 3 tablespoons of soft butter combined with 3 tablespoons of white flour, salt, and freshly ground pepper. The beurre mani?
Yes.
Okay, that sounds a little like a roux.
Well, it is essentially the same thing as a roux. You but the roux, you start with that. So you put in the butter, melt it, mix in the flour, and then you make a souffle or a sauce or what have you.
Right.
But in this case, we want to cook the vegetables first and then thicken it. So if you try to put the butter in and the flour, it ended up as a mess. So you mix that together and then add it, and you'll see what happens.
Okay.
Just look at this chicken. Isn't this wonderful?
Oh, yeah, that's getting a beautiful brown color.
Yeah, absolutely delightful.
Browning very nicely. And
yes.
The flour is a large part of the...
Oh, yes, it browns nice. So what we need to do now is you take one and I'll take the other.
Okay.
We trim off the roots.
Right.
And then we need to trim off these leaves on the top because...
Sort of the section up there where it starts to spread up about this height?
Yes, I think we'll cut all that off because you get dirt down in there. See, when these are grown, they will hill them up so that you blanch the bottom portion. You might like to actually taste this when we're doing it. I'll wash this so that you can get started on the cutting.
Okay.
And so they'll actually hill these up so that the bottom part is blanched.
Right.
So you can start on that, Don.
Right, and we'll just toss that aside.
Toss that in the garbage.
Give that one a rinse.
Yeah,
and we've already rinsed our mushrooms.
And we've rinsed our mushrooms, so I did that at lunch hour because when you don't have much time,
right,
you want to get that done ahead of time.
Okay.
So you cut those into rings now.
Much like that?
Oh, that's great. And I'll get the pan going with the butter. So how much butter was it?
3 tablespoons.
3 tablespoons. I won't use quite as much because we're trying to be just a touch conscious of these sorts of things.
Now, as I'm trimming these, I notice that they're white at the bottom and greenish up towards the top.
Yes.
Do we want to, say, go heavily on the white end, so I should stop before I get up this far, or are we going to use the whole work?
Well, if you're going to be a purist, fine, but I'm kind of hungry, so I'd like to do it all.
Okay. I've got an end here.
Yeah. So just try that one, and I'll leave a bit of the white piece. So what does that taste like?
A very mild onion.
Very mild onion, yeah. Well, that's a leek for you.
And this is down at the white end.
Down the white part, yes.
A very slightly different flavor.
Yes. And so this is why they'll be hilled up. So you dig a trench and you plant the leeks in the bottom of it.
Right.
And as they grow, you gradually hill them up like you would potatoes. So then you get a long stalk that's blanched.
That's white most of the way.
Blanched. So they do this, you know, they can do it with asparagus and with rhubarb and all that stuff. Oh, we seem to be having a fine lot of action here in the chicken pot, Don. Oh,
it smells excellent.
I hate to keep mentioning this, but it's so beautiful, so brown and golden.
Yeah.
And really, really nice.
Gorgeous. And
look at that.
That will be a big part of the presentation in this meal.
Oh, absolutely. You want this nice golden breast to poke out of the top there. So the thing we want to do with these leeks is cut them into coins, as you're doing. And
I just toss these in there?
Toss those in, and we'll get them kind of in one layer if possible. And we need to cook those until they wilt.
Okay, I can start on the mushrooms. You wanted those in quarters, right?
Yes, it says take 1.5 pounds of large mushrooms and quarter them, and that will give us the mushrooms that we add to this afterwards.
Okay.
So we have the leeks cooking and doing that.
Okay, so we're not looking at any, we'll see little slivers of mushroom. We're talking about nice big chunks of this, aren't we?
Well, something you can get your teeth around.
Yeah.
And I think it was only until probably the Victorian times when people started getting really fussy and mincing. And of course...
cured that in the 60s, didn't we?
Well, yes, we cured that in the 60s when we went back to the earth.
Yeah.
And so we have the leeks nicely cooking. You can see the butter sizzling there up around them. And they'll start to melt down in just a minute. Now, the thing with the chicken, Don, is you want to get it cooked on both sides, get it well sealed, and cooking rather nicely. So I usually look underneath and see that the meat is getting nice and white. So it's still a bit pinkish there where it's thick.
And chicken, of course, is one of those things that you do want to be careful to make sure it's properly cooked.
Yes, well cooked. So the leeks are, see, they're just starting to get a bit softer there, so I'll start turning these over. And that should be very good. So basically what we're going to do with these is...
They smell very nice cooking that.
Isn't that wonderful? And although there's a lot of stuff said about butter, butter is a nice natural product, and in moderation it gives totally different flavor.
Well, I mean, that's the trick to anything, isn't it? It's moderation.
Moderation.
Everything in moderation, including moderation.
Including moderation. But the point is, you're not going to eat this every day.
No.
You have... No. You know, we got together, we like food, and we're just going to have a special evening now. Well, tomorrow it's back to water and dry bread.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're bringing people over for dinner, or if you're in the mood for a good meal, you're not going to go, oh, well, can I afford to have something cooked in butter? Heck with it. Do it.
Because you especially want to do it properly.
And as we mentioned earlier, lifestyle these days is a large measure towards the longevity that we're enjoying.
Oh,
and
yes.
Again, it's just a matter of moderation.
And if you want to cook properly, the Northern Italian food is based on dairy products. It's this
Heavily
spillover
cream-based.
German and Swiss. So you have lots of meat and creams and butters and so on. Once you get south of, say, Rome, then you get into lots and lots of vegetables, olive oil,
And big league tomatoes.
big tomatoes, a bit of fish, not many sweets. It's apparently the ideal diet.
Well, that's comforting to know, because that's the end of Italian cooking that I tend towards.
Oh, yes. So stay south. And I'm sure that warmth helps a lot, too.
There goes my trip to Labrador.
There goes your trip back. Well, dress warmly. So the chicken is coming along really well.
Yeah.
So we'll give it just
Now, you're right, that is beautiful. And every time you turn that, it gets a little nicer look.
yeah, really, really golden brown. You can see the leeks starting to turn there. So,
And you were saying earlier that we're going to cook those until they wilt.
yes, you want to get them just wilted down a bit. Now, maybe if we put the mushrooms aside, we
I
can start talking.
set them back in the same bowl.
Yeah, start getting into the herbs that we're going to need for cooking.
And you brought in a whole bouquet of herbs from your own garden.
Oh, yes. It's so important to have fresh herbs, and these are really wonderful because the color, the texture, and the taste. So I just want you to...
All of these can be grown in Newfoundland too, can't they?
Oh, they're all out in my garden. Yes.
There you go.
So just crush the leaf of this plant here and tell me what it reminds you of.
Give me a hint.
Think tropical. We're talking more. Think tropical.
Oh, pineapple?
Pineapple. Yes, and this is pineapple sage. Isn't that remarkable?
Yes. It really is.
Yeah. Now use a different finger and try this one over here.
Is this a sage as well?
Oh, not telling.
Okay.
Not telling. Okay, now you pass me the mushrooms because they're
Okay.
ready to go in. Now just try this one with a different finger.
Okay.
I'll throw in the mushrooms
One on
there.
the far side.
Yeah,
And just crush the leaf a little between.
yeah, with the finger and just give it a good sniff.
It smells a little like Old Spice.
Good. You know what it's called? It's called Eau de Cologne mint.
Eau de Cologne mint.
Eau de Cologne, or orange mint. It has a much more pronounced orange flavor in the summer,
Right.
but even now it's pretty good. Now we're going to have to interrupt our sniffing for just a minute
Right.
because it's time to put the milk and honey in on the chicken.
Okay.
So I'll just turn it over to get the bottom down so that more of the meat will then be covered.
Right.
And I've been sneaking that down in temperature so that it isn't too hot. And then we pour in the milk, and this could get quite exciting.
3 cups and I'll move away.
Okay, 3 cups of milk. So we'll get that in. Oh boy. And then it'll just simmer down, if I can use a bit of a pun there. And now there goes the milk. So it'll just nicely cover the chicken there.
Right.
If you got the honey there, Don?
The
please?
honey, yep. I'll get the cap off for you. There you go.
Okay. So we need 1/3 of a cup of this, and we need a gentle hand with this. And
Now, milk and honey, kind of biblical connotations. aren't
oh,
they?
biblical. And the interesting thing is, you talk about things being changed. When you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken or somewhere like that, what can you get in addition to ketchup with your chicken?
You can get honey or honey mustard or...
Absolutely. So things haven't changed all that much.
No.
Now I'll put the lid on this and get that going. And you get started on the herbs now.
Okay,
So
what do we need?
we need some sage, 3 leaves of sage. So you
Right.
take that. Have a bit of a sniff now before you use that.
You don't even have to crush this when it's right there.
Oh, yes.
And we take the vein out of, or the,
Yes, take the
stem
vein
out the
out.
back.
And just chop that up very finely, please. I think we already have a bit there.
I've done some. I'm just going to do a little more to add to it. And then a little parsley.
Yes. And we also needed some savory.
Right.
And of course, savory is the local herb of choice that we put in dressing. But
Instead of sage.
instead of sage, because if you go to the mainland and you serve them chicken there, they say, "What's in this dressing? It's so wonderful."
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it is wonderful. And many herbs that are grown in Newfoundland, I mentioned the orange mint already. The flavor isn't quite right because it's getting colder now, and it's an oil that gives all this flavor. But when we get to savory, it has found its home in Newfoundland.
Okay. And it's also known, if you see it in cookbooks, as summer savory, isn't it?
It's summer savory. There is a winter savory, which is perennial, but the summer savory, well, you can get into a big argument.
We'll get into that later.
But summer savory is best.
Okay, and what I have in here is a little of the parsley, a little of the sage,
Yes.
a little savory,
A little savory.
and a little salt and pepper.
And a little salt and pepper.
Okay.
And so we've snipped all that up, and you just toss that in around the milk.
Around the
also.
chicken.
Yes, in on the milk. And that will then do things.
Do things.
Wonderful things. So we need to get all of that out. And
That's a line out of 2010. Yes.
2010. Well,
So now we're moving ahead in time.
yes, 2010. And
Something wonderful.
we go on with that. Now, I've included a little purplish flowered plant there. Just have a whiff of that leaf.
Now I recognize that one. That's thyme, and we're growing some of that up at our place. But we don't have these flowers.
No, well, mine's blooming now, and it's just a great sea of mauve with all these beautiful leaves. This is the proper culinary time, and it's kind of nice.
Now, do you use the flowers when you chop this?
You can.
Okay. I usually chop it stem and all.
Yes.
How about you?
Oh, yes, it's all good. But
So-
this is just for your appreciation as it
Oh,
happens.
we're not actually using this.
No, we're not actually using this. But what we do need, so I can see you've got the urge to chop. We need some root ginger.
Right.
And it calls for a half teaspoon of minced fresh ginger.
Right.
And
And we'll just peel the outside. And this is a very strong.
yeah, it's a very strong sort of flavor.
Right. Well, look, while I'm peeling this, why don't we take a short break while all that gets sautéed together?
Okay.
And we'll be back in about 1 minute right here. Here we are back with my special guest, Peter Scott. We've finished cutting up the garlic.
The garlic,
The ginger, I'm sorry.
and
And I've measured
that's
out some brown sugar for
Okay,
you.
you put that in. I'm just putting the finishing whip on the beurre mani here.
All that goes in with the leeks.
Yeah, spread that around. Put in the sugar.
Right. And again, sprinkle it over.
Yeah, the brown sugar is just to enhance the flavor, and it's surprising what a difference it makes. And we have some chicken broth there.
Right.
Want to keep this theme, so that can be tossed in.
Chicken broth right in among the leeks.
Right in amongst leeks. And so that will get going.
A lot, or do you want to?
Oh, all of it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'll put in the beurre mani
Right.
and
Mix it
stir
around.
this around. I think I better use.
And that will thicken the.
It'll do a wonderful job thickening all of this up. So I'll give that a good stir.
So chicken's just pretty well coming along.
Yes. Well,
This is ready, and what we'll do is we'll take another short break and join you and you out in the dining room to see how this turns out.
well, just have a look at the chicken. Isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
And just smell it.
Here we are back with my special guest, Peter Scott. And for a botanist, we've gotten into some marvelous chicken and vegetables and things like that. It's beautiful. It's got gorgeous coloration. As you were mentioning, we had the pine nuts to sprinkle on top,
Yes.
just as a garnish.
Yeah. Lots of bright colors.
Yeah, the aroma on it is incredible.
Yes. You can't beat that chicken. I think it's the best chicken I've ever tasted. What
And
do you think?
I'm going to try it in a second. First, I wanted to mention just how nicely the leeks and mushrooms thickened up with the beurre marine.
Beurre mani.
Bani.
Yes.
So I'm in a marine frame of mind today. Let's try the chicken.
Yes. Well, I guess I shouldn't wait for you, because it looks kind of funny if the cook doesn't eat.
Indeed. However,
yes.
Oh, that is lovely. Oh, and the milk and the honey gives a touch of sweetness.
Yes.
Gorgeous.
Really is special.
And for a 700-year-old chicken, that's really tender.
It's all in the cooking, Don. All in the cooking.
Just a recipe.
Yes.
So if you were around King Richard's court in around 1350, you might have had some of this.
Yes, indeed you would. And much more besides. Now, what do you think of these leeks and mushrooms?
And leeks. Let's get some of each onto a fork. Oh, now they are lovely. I'd love to go on and on about this. We have run out of time. Great recipe put together in a half hour, Peter. Thanks for coming and doing this for us. This is the second time you've come, the second time you've done a great job. Thank you for being with us, and join us next week, same time, same place, for 30-minute menus. Good night.